What's going on, guys? Avid Necro here, bringing you another banger here for an updated Defiler build. Before we were using Snake in the Stars and the Jarl's War Chief set to really decrease the amount of healing that the enemy can do, along with some serious dot pressure, but in update 41 I have updated the build slightly with a few different skills, a different set, and one that's more of a an old school play style, but it really adheres to the Necromancer's capabilities of just AoE, detonating, and kind of like a corpse explosion without the corpse. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it here. Looking at our character sheet, our unbuffed stats are sitting at almost 30k max magic. I have noticed that the higher that your resource pools are, the higher damage and healing that your skills do. I know a lot of builds try to get away with high spell damage, high weapon damage, but keep in mind that your max resources will take a big role in that as well. About every 10,000 magic that you have is 1,000 spell damage. I know it's kind of hard to see that on this sheet, but if you go onto a couple of websites and look at the stats and how everything works together, it's equivalent to about 1,000 weapon and spell damage per 10,000 resources that you have, depending on magic or stamp. Spell damage 4,100. It's pretty good for a Magcro without any buffs yet. That's without, obviously our spell pots, our continuous attack. If you do go into CP, any other buffs that you might receive from your teammates. Spell resistance and physical resistance are a bit lower on this build. It is squishier. It's squishier than I particularly like. I have, I've gotten one shot a few times, but this build makes up for it in other areas. Magic recovery will go up a lot. We hit about 1,700, 1,800, and then stam recovery and health recovery aren't as important, but stam definitely, to break free. Critical resistance sitting at 1,700. That won't go up any higher unless you put on a set or put on impenetrable pieces. I know it's not where it should be, but you have to make do with what you have. And Necromancer is really good with its passive healing and passive damage mitigation. We are using this bit of it's not unknown, but it's a food that a lot of people don't particularly use, and that is the ghastly eyeballs, or ghostly eyeballs. I don't remember what it's called. But this is going to give us a lot of max magic and a lot of magic recovery. And that's because we are using a specific mythic that will make up for our other resources. And I'm sure you can guess what it is, Death Dealer's Fate. We're using the Apprentice to give us an extra boost in our spell damage, and we are Vampire Stage 3 because that is a must in PvP to have that 30% reduced 30% reduced damage. And then also an ESO plus member. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, looking at our back bar stats here. 23k spell resistance, 23k physical resistance. That will go up with our resistance flesh. Remember that. The higher our heals are, we get the equivalent in resistance for half the heal. So if you look at our tooltip, for those that don't know or are new to Necromancer, look at that juicy heal, 13k heal. You get spell and physical resistance equal to half the amount healed for 3 seconds. So if you do a 10,000 heal, you get 5k resistances for 3 seconds. And, depending on where your health bar is, if you spam that, you could have, depending on how good your healing is at that time, you can have high resistances for a good amount of time. So about 27, 28k when you do a a 10k heal, you get 5k resistances on top of what we already have. So keep that in mind. Okay. Jumping into our skills here. First, we're doing Skeletal Arcanist. Skeletal Arcanist is a great dot. It's kind of slept on. I know a lot of people don't particularly like to run this because it doesn't really do as much as people like. It would be nice if they added like a major sorcery brutality buff to this, or maybe even like a prophecy savagery. But it is what it is. I'm not going to dive too deep into my complaints with Necromancer. But I will say that this skill in particular does 20k dot damage. It doesn't show it on the stat sheet because it's, 20 seconds. Every 2 seconds it's going to do this 1800 shock damage. But if we buff up here real quick, that does 2006 shock damage every 2 seconds. So that's about 20,000 damage over 20 seconds. So, not really looking that great up front, but the damage over time that it does provide for us is actually pretty good. And it's not only single target, this is AoE. So it's going to affect everyone around us plus the initial target. LE susceptibility, this is kind of a must since the changes to all of the status effects. You're going to hit the enemy with chilled, concuss, and burning, and then give them a major breach debuff. And it's a free skill. And it's also free damage. You can just spam this and it does free damage, and it doesn't cost you anything. Empowering Grasp, one of my favorite skills on the Necromancer, which is also kind of slept on. This thing does so much utility for your toolkit, and it's also going to empower your healing and your damage on your summons. So back to what I was saying about Skeletal Arcanist. When you're buffed, that's going to do 2006 damage every 2 seconds. So in half, so 10 seconds, you're going to do 20,000 spell damage. I'm sorry, 20,000 dot damage. With this, it's going to increase it by another 1,000. That's including your heals too. So this guy's going to be doing 30,000 damage in 10 seconds. It's kind of crazy if you think about it, but it's a lot of pressure, and it's AoE too. It's not single target. So it's a really powerful dot, and I can kind of see why the devs don't pay too much attention to it, because you got to really look into the class and how it operates and how the skills synergize with each other. So this is also going to buff our Ghost's healing by 1,000 too. So in PvP, I'll take whatever healing I can get, an extra 500 since healing's reduced in half in PvP. It goes a long way. 16 seconds times 500, whatever that is, that's a lot of healing. And it's just comes with the effect. So more about Empowering Grasp. This thing does 3 different effects with each circle that it provides. Each one will always apply minor maim to the enemies, but the first circle is going to snare them, the second circle is going to immobilize them, and the third circle will stun them. And if you get good at it, you can really time up those stuns, and Necromancer has a reliable stun. So I've used it enough to kind of get an idea where I need to be with an enemy to get the stun off. About right here is where that third circle will land. And it's a pretty good radius too. I would say that the circle animation itself doesn't do justice. It looks smaller than it really is, but I'd say give it another extra 2 meters, and that's about what your radius will look like with the stun. You can stack all 3 of them up against an enemy. I don't really know where there's a magic wall. But like if you have an enemy pinned up against a wall, or if you're in a tight corner in a corridor, you can proc all 3 of those, and it does a lot of utility to your benefit. So when you get a blast bones going and you hit all 3 of those and they're snared, and now, oh shit, they're immobilized, and now they're trying to dodge roll, but then they get hit with the stun while you're peppering them with your force pulse, it does a lot. So I'm trying to maximize everything that the Necromancer can do into 1 bar, and a lot of this goes with its dots and its capabilities to lock the target down, I guess is what I'm saying. And when you do all of that combined with your ultimate, you're going to be doing some serious pressure. So, Empowering Grasp, great skill. It kind of gets costly if you spam it too much. I mean, there's ways to get around that, but it's not bad. Not to mention we're Imperial too, if I didn't say that in the character sheet. I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but it is what it is. Force Pulse. This does a lot more than I thought as well. So, Crushing Shock's always a great option because of that interrupt that it provides. But this does the same thing, just slightly more cost, a little bit more damage, but the cleave damage is where it's at. 9k magic damage if they were already afflicted with a status effect. This whole patch is around status effects. It surrounds them. everyone's got a status effect on them. So when you're kind of sitting in the back and you're just hitting someone, you're going to hit 2 other targets with 9k magic damage for free, just because it's cleave damage. So it's a great skill to have because we're going to hit them with Empowering Grasp, Elemental Susceptibility. This is going to be going off for 30k damage over 10 seconds. Not to mention they're going to have reduced healing because of Major and Minor Defile. Blast Bones is our bread and butter burst skill. I know that it's not the same as Stalking, but that tooltip gets up to 15k when we're buffed up. Look at that. Diseased damage. 15k disease damage, applying Major and Minor Defile. For those that don't know, applying the disease status effect is going to give you Minor Defile. That's just how it works with the status effects. So having both of those, you're going to have, what is it, 8%, I think? I don't remember what they did with the percentages, but if it is 12%, then Minor Defile should be 8%, if not 6%. So it's either 18 to 20% reduced healing. But a 15k, you know, Blighted Blast Bones it's really impressive to me. Pestilent Colossus, another way to apply disease, and it's going to give you major vulnerability towards the enemy, which is nice. It's AoE. It does great damage, you know, 13, 14, 14. You know, if you can get all those to crit, it's pretty sweet. It costs 179. They did buff this a couple of patches ago, so that's my go-to. And keep in mind, each Gravelord ability you have is going to increase your critical chance when the enemy is lower health by 10%. So we're rocking 30%. Before we go to the back bar, I would like to say that there is another variation of this build that you can do. It's a little more difficult to do, but it does reward those that are skilled with the Necromancer. And that is putting Ricochet Skull on here and Mystic Siphon here. Now, Mystic Siphon is going to give you a couple of things as well. It's going to be another dot. It's going to give you Magicka Stam and health recovery while you have it siphoning. And it's also going to increase your penetration while it's up, because Blast Bones is only a short duration, but this will give you 15 or 20 seconds of 1500 spell penetration due to your Necromancer passive Dismember. Ricochet Skull does also cleave damage, but it's going to do 50% on the third cast. It's not as much damage as Force Pulse, only because Force Pulse is going to ignore 10% of the enemy's resistances. That's just how the Destruction Staff passive works. But it is going to increase your critical chance by another 10% by having this slotted. And then Mystic Siphon's a free skill, so it kind of frees up your Magicka cost, since this one does cost quite a bit. I don't know why it seems like Force Pulse, even though they cost the same, it just seems cheaper to spam. I don't know why. It's probably just in my head, but that is one way that you can play. Now, and I'm sorry, Unnerving Boneyard is what you want to place on there as well. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 50% critical chance, or critical strike chance against enemies under 25% health. That is the Necromancer's execute. That's how it works. The lower the health they have, the higher execute chance that you have. So 50% on top of your 20 that you already carry with the spell critical pots that we run. You're at 70%. Critical strike chance when they're under 25% health. So not bad. It was a nice little buff 1 or 2 patches ago. This is one way that you can play. It is a lot of fun, but it does require quite a bit of teamwork, and I've noticed in Team Deathmatch, for Team Deathmatch weekend, that there's a lot of solo players out there that just don't know what they're doing, and there's zero teamwork. So if you can manage your resources, this is a very fun way to play. It definitely makes you feel like the Master of the Dead. But for more of a solo aspect, and to be a little more efficient, you are better set up with this, because this is also a good stun. It doesn't cost as much as it would if you weren't an Imperial, so it's still it's a good stun if you know how to use it. Moving on to the back bar here, we are using Dead in Pain, Resistant Flesh, Mortal Coil, Summoner's Armor, Spirit Guardian, and Ravenous Goliath. The reason why we have so many Bone Tyrant abilities is because of another set that we are running. So just to go over it real quick to tell you what each ability is, just for those that aren't familiar with Necromancer. Dead in Pain is a free skill. While it's slotted, your damage taken is reduced by 3%. Resistant Flesh is your burst heal. This is going to give you those resistant buffs when you have it gives you half the spell and physical resistance to the amount healed for 3 seconds. So if you do a 10k heal in PvP, that's going to be 5k physical and spell resistance for 3 seconds. Mortal Coil is another free skill. This is going to be our second hot. It's also going to give you magic and stam recovery every 2 seconds while you're siphoning the corpse. And because of one of our sets that we're using, the corpse will be ourselves, so this heal will always follow us and it'll never break with line of sight. Not to mention that it is also free, and it's going to increase our healing with all of our other heals on our bar by 3%. Summoner's Armor, this is our armor buff, and it's going to reduce the cost of our Skelly Mage, Spirit Mender, and Blast Bones. And finally, Spirit Guardian, it's going to be our third hot on this bar, also reducing our damage by 10%. With this build, you can see a 10%, 20%, and then an additional 3% from this and 30% from your Vampire Undead passive. So we're looking at 30, 40, 53% damage mitigation while on your back bar. So reducing the enemy's damage in half just by having these skills active. Necromancer is very tanky, and I enjoy the class for that reason particularly. Ravenous Goliath, this is your oh shit button. This is what you're going to hit when you're kind of outnumbered and you're running out of space to kite. You just need that little bit of extra time to, you know, kind of recover whatever resource that you need. Hold block while you're doing it. If you can, get off a few heavy attacks to get some heals in. You can go offensive with this, but I particularly use it for defensive purposes only. Only because people target you like crazy whenever you get into this form and they want to kill you immediately. So you're kind of putting a target on your back, but it can provide a bit of healing if you can get off some heavy attacks from a distance. With that being said, let's jump into the sets here. We are running Plague Break. Plague Break is an old school set from I don't know how many patches ago, but man is this a lot of fun. Ever since status effects got a huge buff, basically what I like to do is I try to hit as many people as I can with this, and then they just kind of like, in a way of Diablo 4, they have the whole corpse explosion thing. That's one of my favorite playstyles with Necromancer. This is the best that I could kind of get to that without having to use the other siphoning morph of Mystic Siphon. It's not as reliable of a corpse explosion, but you could do it if you get enough corpse on the ground. This is a great way to just have a explosion on all of the enemies. Now, it's not a bomber build. I don't want people to be discouraged by this setup to say, oh no, it's another bomber. No, 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 no. This is the way that Necromancer shines. So you place a plague on every enemy that's hit with direct damage for 4725 damage over 10 seconds. And you apply the disease status effect. So this is our third way to apply disease status effect. If the plague is removed early, it's going to do a bit of burst damage. And it's going to increase by 50% per enemy hit. Now, it's not a lot of damage, but there's so many ways to negate status effects via cleanses, particularly Templars. If you have a Templar in the group, you're going to hit that synergy that removes all status effects. You're going to get hit with some damage. And this is only direct damage too. So anything that we do, basically all of our skills are direct damage. It's just going to reapply it. There's no cooldown on this. I'm sorry, there isn't a cooldown. It can affect every 20 seconds per target, once per attack, and scales off the higher of your weapon or spell damage. But in PvP, 20 seconds, you know, it seems like a long time, but if you're fighting and they cleanse it, you know, the next enemy is also going to have one. If they cleanse it, then the other enemy is going to have one. You're going to have all of those enemies have one of these on, and then each cleanse is just going to increase your damage by 50%. So 3 enemies, that's 150% of the 3666 tooltip that you have. I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm just trying to explain it to those that aren't familiar with Necromancer in general and Plague Break, because it is a bit of an older set. Nobility and Decay, this is our back bar set. I can't get away from it. I can't get enough of it. It's probably my favorite set for Necromancer because it just works so well, particularly with the tethers. You want to run Sharpen on this, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. And the Physical and Stam Restore enchant to give you the Minor Breach buff. Nobility and Decay is going to give you max health, 4% healing, more max health. So casting a Bone Tyrant ability while in combat grants you Beautiful Corpse and Death's Favor for 16 seconds. Death's Favor increases your healing received and reduces damage taken by up to 12%. So, remember how we talked about 53% damage mitigation? Well, here's another 12%. So now you're at 65% damage mitigation. Based on your missing health. This can occur every 20 seconds and is reduced by 2 seconds for each slotted Bone Tyrant ability. Casting a corpse-consuming ability consumes Beautiful Corpse, treating you as the corpse. So if you pay attention here, we have the corpse on ourself now. And Mortal Coil now stays with us, and you don't have to worry about line of sighting it. And for each Bone Tyrant ability that we have, it's going to reduce our cooldown of this set by 2 seconds. So our skills are Dead in Pain, Summoner's Armor, and Ravenous Goliath. So you could swap this out for another Bone Tyrant ability and then put Mortal Coil here if you feel like your damage is okay. But this is how I feel comfortable with, so we get 6 seconds reduced off of our Nobility and Decay cooldown. So instead of 20 seconds, our cooldown is now 14 seconds. So you have like 4 seconds in between where you can recast the Mortal Coil on yourself again. But there's also going to be corpses everywhere, so you're always going to have somewhere to cast it, but you just have that 4 seconds difference between yourself and the ground. So if you can time it right, it really works. It's a great skill. Another thing that you could do if you feel like your healing's okay is you can swap out Mortal Coil for Mystic Siphon. Mystic Siphon lasts 20 seconds, so the uptime on that is always going to be 100%, since the cooldown on this is 14 seconds. And then we are rocking Sword and Board on this because we just want to be even more tankier. I have Sturdy on the shield, defending on the mace. Monster set, Balorg. Why not, right? So we're just going to buff our ultimate. We're just going to buff our damage and penetration even more when we cast our ultimate. And the higher that our ultimate number is, the higher our damage and penetration is going to be. So fully buffed up here. I'll just cast this right here. 5641, and then you saw it was 19k spell damage. Not bad at all. Oh, our food ran down too. Whoops. So, you can take a look at all of our skills here. Force Pulse doing 10k cleave damage, 15k still on that. You know, everything's just buffed. Balorg's such a great skill. I know it was already down, but the damage of all of your abilities will obviously go up tremendously with the amount of penetration and spell damage that you get from Balorgs. Trainee chest, reinforced, gives you more health. We are running lower health on this build, and it'll go up with Death Dealer's Fate. Balorgs, infused shoulders just to get a little bit more max resources, and then Plague Break and Nobility and Decay on the rest of the body. We're running 5 medium, 1 light, 1 heavy. Nobility and Decay Amulet, Bloodthirsty, just to help out with that execute scaling. Plague Break, Bloodthirsty, and then Death Dealer's Fate. Death Dealer's Fate is great on this in particular to us not having the higher max stam and max health. So if you take a look here, let's just put this on him. Our max health will eventually reach, I think, 28k. Just shy of it. And then max magic will go up to around 29, 30. And then our max stamina will also be around 18k. Maybe 18.5, I think. So, Death Dealer's Fate really comes in clutch with this particular setup because we were running a mono stat food, just boosting our max magic and our magic recovery, because this mythic will make up for the rest. And honestly, it's not the most favorable mythic because it doesn't really provide any damage. But having more max resources actually does improve your damage, so keep that in mind. It just keeps going up. I don't remember exactly where it stops at, but I would like to see it at its full potential. So we're at 30,000 magic. Yeah, okay, so 30,000 magic, 28k health, and 19k stamina. Not bad at all for Macro. Not bad at all. And then penetration before our ally susceptibility, 7885. Spell damage just shy of 5k. Mag recovery is good, 1607 before our ghost. Or no, that is with her ghost, I apologize. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's always nice to show like the raw stats and then what your buff stats look like too in a build video. And then I don't really have a way of showing the resistances because I don't have lower health, but there is a screenshot that I can show where you do hit 30k resistances for a short window, depending on how low your health is, but that's where Resistant Flesh really shines. Okay. Champion points, I don't typically play in CP, but if you want to see what I'm rocking, this is what I have. Focused Mending, Force of Nature, Master at Arms, Untamed Aggression, Fortified, Pain's Refuge, Bastion for them Pesty Sorks and Arcanists, and Celerity. I don't know if I missed anything, but if I did, please let me know in the comments. I would be happy to answer any questions that you guys may have for this build. This is the updated Defiler build. It's a lot of fun, a little bit different sets, and we are a bit squishier, but the outcome of that is we provide a lot more damage and a lot more utility for our teammates, providing Grave Grasp doing a lot of the work for us, and it's just an all-around fun utility build. It can be soloed, but it's, you know, Necromancer's a bit difficult these days. Holding out for that buff. Maybe update 45. 3 patches from now. We'll see. But that's the Defiler build, guys. Thanks again for supporting me in this channel. If you like this video, please hit that subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up. Check out my Army of the Dead build, and I will see you guys in the graveyard. Peace out. Stay frosty.